to another episode of the BioHub. Today we have the pleasure to be joined by David Esposito, who currently serves as President and CEO of ONL Therapeutics. David has over 30 years healthcare experience and has built and scaled multiple healthcare companies that have resulted in successful exits, including Fadia's exit to Thermo Fisher, where he was president, and Armune Biosciences exit to Exact Sciences, where he served as CEO. David is now at the helm of ONL Therapeutics, who are developing innovative therapies to protect and improve the vision of patients with a range of retinal diseases and conditions. So join us today as David gives us a run through his life, the recent advancements of ONL, making the transition from pharma to biotech, as well as the capital markets. So David, thanks so much for coming on. How are you?
Hey, Tom, doing really well. Thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. So let's start off with a bit about you then. So can you take us back in time, give us an overview of your life and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, I'll try to make it quick so we don't have too much time, but I will I'll cover some ground. So I'm a New Jersey kid by birth and went to school at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Go Army, beat Navy in a couple weeks. Big football game coming, but after graduating from West Point, served in the Army for a bit. Was in the first Gulf War as a lieutenant with the 101st Airborne Division, and those experiences gave me some really good kind of foundational experiences for leadership. And when I decided to transition off of active duty, saw really an interest in a purposeful journey in the healthcare field, and started with a big pharma company with Merck. Started out as a sales rep for Merck, spent about 15, 16 years with Merck, both in sales, marketing, commercial strategy roles. All of those were US based, so kind of typical journey of growing in field sales, growing in marketing, and then ultimately in commercial strategy, and then made a pretty big pivot on my career, moving from a big pharma organization to more early and mid-stage biotech companies. You mentioned a few at the lead. Some were diagnostic businesses, and then also over time transitioned back into pharma and biotech company where I am now at ONL Therapeutics. Behind me, it's downtown Ann Arbor, where the company's based. And I'd say after my journey of leading big pharma, got involved in more research-based technologies that ultimately form companies and try to grow. And so it's been an exciting field in that journey, but certainly learned some really good principle-based leadership and healthcare operational discipline from the big pharma companies, and then joined biotech. So about 30 years, about half of it in big companies, half of it in kind of building, scaling early stage companies.
Nice. Awesome. So can you provide a bit of an overview of ONL, I guess the pipeline, and more generally the ophthalmology space as a whole?
Sure. So ONL Therapeutics, as I mentioned, originally founded by Dr. David Sachs, who's a retina specialist at the University of Michigan. So kind of classic university spin out of technology. Michigan has a really good hub of life sciences and good support around that. And so company's a little bit over a decade old. I've been the CEO for about 5-6 years. Joined the company where, typically is that challenging time of really good preclinical work, really good animal data, but just having a kind of difficult bridging that valley of death, so to speak, with regards to raising capital and getting into human trials. But ONL, our main target on the retina is a receptor called the FAS receptor. FAS is a target that is a common death pathway across a number of disease states in the eye. And so David's original research work showed if you could block that FAS receptor, you protect retinal cells from that death signaling pathway, and also importantly, quiet the inflammatory response due to stress in the eye across a number of disease states. So we are kind of back of the eye targets, so to speak, in the ophthalmology space. We've developed a lead compound, ONL-1204, which is a small peptide. It's delivered via intravitreal injection. Classic way of delivering wet AMD products and dry AMD products, injection in the eye. And we've been in the clinic for the better part of 5 years. We have run ONL 1204 in 3 different clinical programs, one for retinal detachment, which is an acute indication, and then also 2 chronic indications, dry age-related macular degeneration, the more advanced form, geographic atrophy, and also open-angle glaucoma. So we've made good progress across those 3 indications. We started obviously with phase 1 programs in each of those indications. We did those in Australia and New Zealand. And then we've begun to methodically begin our phase 2 programs. We completed a phase 2 program in retinal detachment, and now more recently received some funding to fund a phase 2 study in geographic atrophy. That'll be US and Europe based. And then we hope about this time next year to be talking about a phase 2 study in open angle glaucoma as well. And so it's been an exciting journey for the company. Typical early stage, not without its occasional ups and downs, but the team continues to grow. And with this financing, we hope to get there. And you mentioned a little bit about the ophthalmology space. I mean, my history, I started out as a ophthalmology sales representative for Merck over 30 years ago. And so it's really an exciting space. There is a great deal of innovation. And I will say it's large, multi-million patients worldwide across these, but it is an audience of clinicians, be it retina specialists, glaucoma specialists, general ophthalmologists, that you can really get to know very well and watch both the space of diagnostics, therapeutics, equipment, tools really evolve to what we're all in the game for, is try to really improve patients' vision suffering from some of these many blinding diseases.
Yeah, awesome. And you just touched on the Series D round that you just raised as well. Could you share maybe a little bit more on the details of that, as well as any other recent advancements that you guys have made?
Sure. Yeah, glad to. So, I think it's as exciting as the ophthalmology space is and innovative as we think we are and others in the space. It's always tough raising capital and figure out what the plans are. It's certainly, I think most people in my shoes would attest, it's been a bit of a tough journey the last handful of years of raising capital, but we were able to secure a Series D round in September. We put out a press release on it. It was led by Johnson & Johnson Development Corp., so J&J's investment arm, led the round. We had participation from Novartis Venture Fund, and also our lead investor from our B and C rounds, Bios Partners, led our B and C rounds. Bios also piled in, and they are still our largest shareholder in the company. We also have, over the years of B and C and D rounds, had participation from the 3 leading ophthalmology-focused venture capital firms in the U.S., being Excite Ventures, InFocus Capital Partners, and Visionary Ventures. And we felt across our cap table, we've been very well supported, certainly from those 3 groups, with regards to how we think about interactions with clinicians, design the right protocols. That's what their focus is, and it's been very helpful for us over the years. So, I think over those kind of subsequent rounds of financing, we've been able to move through 3 different indications from phase 1, now journeying through phase 2, and hope to keep moving it forward that way.
Yeah, awesome. I think just whilst we're speaking about capital markets, I think this year, as well as I'd say the large part of last year, has just been so difficult out there. We've obviously seen a lot of companies having layoffs, whether that's biotech or pharma, and companies just generally struggling to raise money. How do you think the capital markets will evolve going into next year and the year after?
Yeah, no, always a good question. Maybe a tough one, but I'll put my cards on the table. I do feel like most of these things, we do go in cycles. We've been in a tough road, as you've stated, couple 3 years or so. After the big kind of rush, just pre-COVID and early COVID, with regards to IPOs and the excitement around biotech making a change with regards to addressing the global pandemic, I think we're kind of done rushing that. In the last couple 3 years, we've really dealt with some really tough publicly traded markets, which have really backed up to to venture, and then privately funded companies like ours. So it has been tough. It does seem like this year some M&A has picked up. I think the venture rounds have come back. You know. It's everybody's guess, but it does seem like we've got good energy going into 2025 around markets coming back. I mean, there are a lot of funds with cash. Most of the bigger players, they've got to deploy it someplace, and I think you're starting to see, this year too, somewhat of the cleanup and maybe the consolidation of assets under one company or so that I think also helps create some energy for the next deals. We're certainly kind of believing that, and let's hope it comes through that way.
Yeah, for sure. And just going back to you then, so you mentioned that you spent the first 16 years or so of your career at large pharma. How did you find that transition from going from big pharma to biotech? And then I guess, would there be any advice that you could give to people that are looking to make a similar sort of move?
Sure. I think grateful for my experience in big pharma that way. I mean, I think all the things that maybe traditionally people would think about, really good foundational discipline of, in my case, kind of sales, marketing, commercial strategy, but came to appreciate the foundational discipline around research and development, all of those things that big companies do well, and eventually commercialization on products. So those were really great learning years for me, and gained super appreciation of the challenges of all aspects of executing around that. And then I did decide to make a pretty big pivot to move into early stage biotech companies. I think for me, I came to appreciate the challenges of making the bigger machine run smoother, more efficiently. And there's certainly a lot of challenge and ripe for leadership challenge in that. I just felt like trying to leverage some of those skills in more early stage development to really get my hands around technology and innovation, help create teams to bring that innovation to life was a little bit more exciting for me. And so at the time, and so that's where I've, spent the last half of my career doing that. Both tools or both experiences or both the kind of organizations are necessary to make things go. And so I think they're both good choices in terms of fulfilling career. I do think maybe the advice or the learnings that I've had. I mean, you got to kind of find your way as to what you'd really like to do. There are some great things to scale big companies and global reach around technologies that need really strong leaders to effectively kind of lead and guide that. I think on the flip side, the big companies have a certain cadence to them in terms of decision making, in terms of problem solving. They can move at a different cadence and a pace, need to be very thorough given the risks associated with the businesses they have. We're on the biotech side, and advice to others thinking about doing the journey. It is certainly more unpredictable. You certainly are in more rapid problem solving mode. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to come into work in a day or the night before and say, hey, we got a problem to solve. Let's get in the conference room and figure out how to do it. And, you're much more exposed to the realities of solving that problem in the day, as opposed to maybe kind of punting it to the next review cycle. And so that's the exciting piece of it, energizing piece of it, but also for somebody kind of thinking about it or stepping into it, would just say, hey, that's what you're in for. There's a level of exposure and urgency in doing that, which I found exciting. The other leadership challenge too is that just trying to really make that pace sustainable. Tom, it's not easy running as hard as we do for the long haul without really trying to put some appropriate levels of discipline and engagement to support the team. And sustainability of the team is always a part of my thinking and leading the team, because we are kind of working hard,
Yeah.
and stuff's not getting any easier.
Yeah. Awesome. And then I guess just whilst we're speaking about biotech and pharma, in terms of being a senior leader in both environments, can you share some background on the difference in how the two might think and approach different things?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I think um, the practical side of what you think of kind of big company leadership is, very thorough planning, strategic guidance, good, I'll say kind of matrix level decision making, because there's a lot of risks across the board with regards to decisions that any one leader makes. So I think that kind of team involvement and cohesive alignment is really needed, and a real skill set of leaders in big companies to make sure big teams are aligned to be able to move things forward. And that's really important. I think, the piece on the biotech side, that's a bit different. A lot of people may be peering over the edge from a journey in big pharma, thinking about coming into biotech. It always seems cool. I won't say easy, but kind of cool and fast to be able to do these kind of things, because you only read about the real highlight reels on people doing great things and wonderful progress on technology and exits. The reality is, it's a lot harder than it looks. It takes a lot longer than you think it should. And the other very practical reality is most of the technologies don't work out. You hope you advance the science in the journey we're on, because the practical reality, the odds are against you bringing something from the clinic in research into human trials and then into the marketplace. Those percentages are really small, but you hope in that journey you're advancing the science, empowering others to do more. And that's probably some of the bigger changes and kind of, ways to think about both sides. They're both fundamentally um, critical pieces of the healthcare infrastructure to drive innovation, but a little bit different in how it actually kind of plays out in real time.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was really insightful. And you've had, I guess, a real wealth of experience. If you were to give any advice to first time CEOs or even first time C level leaders or aspiring entrepreneurs, what would it be and why?
Yeah, no, I think maybe two things. One, I may repeat a little bit of what I said on one point, but I think one is, building a good network of peers in the marketplace. That old adage, "It's lonely at the top." It is. That's that's why people say it a lot. And so I think, having a network of peers that you can lean on, rely on, and also support them as well. That cohesive involvement of C-suite leaders, certainly in my world today of early stage biotech, it's critical for me. I think it's a key piece for them as well, to be able to have those resources to share, work through problems, and discuss those things. So I think advice to first time CEOs and people maybe moving from big pharma to biotech, or just first time in a seat like this, is, don't put your head down so much that you forget about building a network. Because when you really need the network, you realize, boy, you may have not been spending enough time building it. So I think, from the get go, being a good team player in the marketplace to advance the network is really helpful, and you'll find you'll need those. And then I think the second piece is a little bit of the maybe repeat and reality check, that innovation is hard. Building teams around innovation is hard. It's tougher than you think. It takes a lot longer. From a practical standpoint, it always takes a lot more money than you think it does. And so those kind of just expectations that you're just not going to walk in, have a good first meeting with a VC, and they're going to fund your Series B financing. I mean, it takes a good slug, and you got to be prepared to read the data on your own team and plan, and adjust that plan accordingly, because you can't just kind of sit on new data without taking some action. So maybe those are a few things to help. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And then this is a question that we normally finish with people that come on the BioHub. So if you were to have dinner with two people, past or present, who would they be and why?
Oh boy, all right, I get a little philosophic here. So, well, I mean, I think, Maybe two things. One's maybe a little bit unconventional, but the first one, so I wouldn't mind sitting down and having a nice meal with George Merck. So George W. Merck, when he helped start, I grew up in the Merck organization, and he had a saying, "Medicines for the people, not the profits." And if you remember that, the profits always will follow. And the foundational discipline that he built in the company, and that kind of legacy, 100 plus, 130 plus years, to have that kind of imprint on the culture of a company around innovation and technology, and taking care of people is just was huge for me in the early part of my career, and I wouldn't mind just breaking bread. He passed away, obviously, I think 40 some odd years or so ago, but be interested in just sharing a meal with George Merck. I think that would be kind of fun. The second one, and maybe it'd be a bit of a buffet style kind of big meal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having dinner with a bunch of the patient number ones in our clinical trial. Tom, it's always been amazed to me in this journey that I've been on building early stage companies, that there's always the first patient that you cross over from animal models into patients, especially with us with eyesights and injection in the eye. And you just think about the discussion of a bold clinical researcher with a patient that's saying, "Hey, this is your patient number one on putting this drug into humans." And having been around those dialogues, to know that it's usually the patient's acknowledgement that, at the end of the day, this may not help me, but if it can help my kids or my grandkids or the generations to follow, I'm all in. I wouldn't mind breaking bread with a few of those in our own clinical trials and just saying thanks, number one, and just getting to know them, because that's the brass tacks on research. It's got to move forward, and it takes bold researchers and bold patients and courageous patients to kind of sign up. So I don't know, maybe that last group would be, at least in my case, 3 or 4 people that
Yeah.
we've had number ones in those trials, and just say thanks and have a good meal.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two awesome answers in there, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Sounds like the work that you guys are doing is coming along really nicely, and certainly a company I'll be keeping an eye out for sure. So, David, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks so much for coming on again.
You're very welcome. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much.
Yeah.